Cool.
Welcome to the Ordinary Council meeting for the 25th of July 2022. Mr Benny, are there any apologies?
Yes, there are, Acting Mayor. Apologies this evening from Councillor Jim Amedi, Councillor Sophie Tan, and a leave of absence for Councillor Angela Long.
Thank you. Council acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of this land, the Bunurong people, and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, while also recognising their deep and continuing connections to climate, culture and country. We also pay our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and their elders and acknowledge their journey. Item 1.3, offering of prayer, reflection or affirmation. As part of Council's commitment to recognising the cultural and spiritual diversity of our community, the reflection this evening will be offered by Mr Knowles Tivendale, a well-known community leader and a friend of the Greater Dandenong Interfaith Network. Please stand.
I believe that we should live in peace and in harmony with nature. Diverse opinions are the essence of creativity. True knowledge comes from scientific approaches, shared wisdom, and genuine two-way engagement. As leaders, you should educate and inform the community while yourself being educated and informed on emerging urgent needs of our community. As the world enters a time of chaos, I reflect on a story told by Auntie Carolyn Briggs that is proven by glaciologists and carbon dating to be over 10,000 years old. The full version, titled The Filling of the Bay, The Time of Chaos, can be found on the Culture Victoria website. I'll briefly paraphrase Auntie Carolyn and hope to do justice to her insight. A long time ago, the land beneath Nam, Port Phillip Bay, was a fertile and productive plain. The Bunurong and other Kulin nations had plentiful access to everything they needed, but bickered about trivial things. The Bunurong were custodians of the fertile plain, but were not living within their means. They hunted animals and were left uneaten. The yam daisies were neglected, the fish were caught in their spawning season, and eels were not harvested. The people were not abiding by the laws of Bunjil, caring for country, or Wa, caring for each other. Bunjil was angry with the people, and the sea rose, destroying the most fertile land by increasing temperatures, thereby increasing water levels to flood the bay. The sea threatened to inundate the whole of Bunurong country and flood all of Greater Dandenong. Bunjil told them they would have to change their ways to save the land. They needed to care for country and care for each other or lose everything. For 9,800 years, the Bunurong committed to caring for country and their neighbours. They taught others how to respect and care for country. The ancient highway, now known as Nepean Highway, has a name that literally means walk in single file, so as to protect the sand dune that protects our country. Spiritualism helps communities to agree on moral and virtuous approaches to decision making. In my view, there is only one higher power greater than humanity, Mother Nature. It is clear that she, Bunjil and Wa are not happy with our progress, and the only true way to lead is to care for country and each other. The latest climate crisis is upon us, and I know many residents, and my wife and daughters included, would implore all councillors to act in a way that cares for and heals country while sharing what you have with other people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Tivendale. Item 1.4, confirmation of minutes of previous meeting.
Happy to move it.
Thank you, Councillor Milkovich. Seconded by Councillor Trong. Oh, apologies. Seconded by Councillor Garrard. Item 1.5, disclosures of interest. Mr Benny, do we have any disclosures of interest?
Yes, Acting Mayor. Single disclosure this evening from Councillor Bob Milkovich. It relates to item 2.3.3, Town Planning Application 30 to 32, Brady Road, Dandenong North, PLN 21/0434. The type of interest is a direct material conflict of interest of a non-pecuniary nature. The nature of the interest is that Councillor Milkovich was the agent who sold this property to the applicant while working as an agent for O'Brien's Dandenong. Councillor Milkovich will be required to restate the conflict prior to the item and leave the chamber for that item. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Benny. Item 1.6, adoption of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting minutes. Moved by Councillor Garrard, seconded by Councillor Formoso. Thank you. Item 2.1.1. Sorry, thank you. COVID brain. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item moved. Item 2.1.1, documents for sealing. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Lim, seconded by Councillor Trong. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item 2.2.1, petitions and joint letters. Is there a mover for this item? Moved by Councillor Garrard, seconded by
Councillor O'Reilly.
Seconded by Councillor O'Reilly. Are there any questions? Any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item 2.3.1, planning decisions issued by Planning Minister's Delegate June 2022. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Garrard.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Dark. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item 2.3.2, planning delegated decisions issued June 2022. Moved by Councillor Dark, seconded by Councillor Garrard. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I'll declare this item carried. Item 2.3.3, Town Planning Application number 30 to 32, Brady Road, Dandenong North, Planning Application PLN 21/0434.
I've got a conflict of interest, Deputy Mayor. It's a direct material conflict of interest of a non-pecuniary nature, as I was the agent who have sold the property to the applicant while working at O'Brien Real Estate in Dandenong. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Milkovich. We'll just wait for Councillor Milkovich to leave the chambers. And is there a mover for this item?
Moved, Councillor O'Reilly.
Moved by Councillor O'Reilly, seconded. Do I have a seconder for this item? Seconded by Councillor Garrard. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition?
Indicate opposition, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dark. So the mover, Councillor O'Reilly, you'd like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Chair. We'll go through, as listed in the agenda, the application, the council officer's response to it. Won't go over all those points. I'll be happy to hear what the points against it are and respond to those. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Councillor Garrard to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support this application because it is a childcare centre, I understand, and women need access to childcare, and it is on a prominent thoroughfare where there is a high level of traffic. Anyway, there is good access to this property, and in terms of safety, we do have a lot of childcare centres that are on main roads, and we have very strong standards in the sector to ensure the safety of the children. So I support this application.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Garrard. Councillor Dark, in opposition.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I rise to oppose this because of several issues and several matters that are listed within the agenda. The first and foremost, the issue with childcare centres being in some areas, particularly on main busy thoroughfares, is an issue that I have had for quite some time. Within my ward, we had a similar issue at a childcare centre on Corrigan Road. It is one that this council had opposed and formally resolved to oppose. Subsequently, through an application and a significant amendment to the plans, was subsequently then approved to go forward. And the residents nearby have got nothing but issues and complaints. The same thing with the childcare centre on Cheltenham Road. A lot of residents have significant amount of issues. It's not as though it's a small issue that comes out during one part of the day. There is, with childcare centres, a significant amount of traffic in the morning as parents go to drop their kids off. There's a significant amount of traffic in the afternoon as those kids are then collected. And then during the day, the noise is quite large and quite loud. Having 20, 40, 60 kids at one time out in the open area, yelling, screaming, does affect the residential amenity, and I know there's such is the same thing on Cheltenham Road with some townhouses and units behind that where there's some elderly residents who are affected by it. The second part I have issue with this site, whilst the site is a good size, it is an area which is suitable for a residential development, not so much for a childcare centre. But the loss of trees in this municipality, given that this council is signatories and big advocates of the climate emergency, to then lose any tree of high value or any tree on the site is something that this council should not be supporting. We can't, as somebody has once said, walk and chew gum at the same time when we preach that we will support the removal of trees, so the retention of trees, and we'll keep going, and at the same time vote to remove some significant trees on this site. And that is the reason why I cannot support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Any other speakers either in favour or against this item?
I'm happy to speak for. Did you say for or against?
Yeah. You've already spoken.
Sorry, for the...
yeah,
sorry, no.
other speakers?
Yep. No.
No? Okay. And right of reply, Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Chair. So I've heard Councillor Dark's objections. My perception of what the objections were was that we're going to have a childcare centre with children near a main road, number one, and number two, trees would be removed because of the application. So the objections don't particularly seem to pertain to this application in particular, apart from the mention of Brady Road, which is pretty much a main road. So, I mean, as under our planning code, we cannot be refusing applications based on children being in a building near a main road. Otherwise, we'd be refusing every second application that comes towards us with all the sorts of planning applications and buildings that we have. Secondly, we can't refuse applications due to trees being, one single tree or trees being removed as well. So, It really fits the planning code, as has been mentioned by Councillor Garrard. Childcare is an important service that's needed in the municipality, particularly with the increased demand due to increased hours coming online in early years over the relatively short term. So as I've heard the objections, they don't seem to fit any planning reasons to refuse the application. I sort of would ask councillors to support the officer's recommendation of approval of this application. Thank you, Chair.
And thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. So all those in favour of the motion?
Okay.
All those in favour?
Speak in favour.
Not at the moment. You've spoken. You can speak afterwards. Afterwards you can speak. We're just voting on the motion. Yeah. So all those in favour of the motion, please raise their hand. Councillor Trung, Councillor Garrard, Councillor Foster, Councillor Lim, Councillor O'Reilly, your hand up. Councillor O'Reilly, unfortunately I can't see your hand up. Thank you. And Councillor Formoso. And all those against the motion, Councillor Dark. It looks like the item is carried. Councillor Garrard, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I just want to point out that there are 3 significant trees on this property, and in fact they're being retained. So it is always a tragedy when we lose trees, but in fact this development has made every effort to retain trees. And in terms of traffic, it is on a main thoroughfare. The impact on local traffic will be minimal. Brady Road is a high trafficked area, and so actually it is a perfect place for a childcare centre. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. We'll just wait until Councillor Milkovich re-enters the room. Item 3, question time public. Mr. Benny.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The first question this evening is from Matthew Kerwin of Noble Park. Why is the community wing of the Paddy O'Donoghue Centre currently closed during the day, and how long will this situation continue? The Paddy O'Donoghue Centre Community Lounge area is an important location for informal community space for the Noble Park community. Ms Sprague can respond, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Ms Sprague.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. All areas of the centre were previously open to the public as it was a customer service centre and therefore it was always staffed. With the closure of that customer service counter, rooms in the centre are available for hire and all hirers have swipe card access to the venue, which they appreciate and works efficiently. This prevents other people from wandering in, entering and disrupting their events. The onset of COVID-19 pandemic has also raised additional challenges, such as cleaning requirements and the need for all users of the centre to operate under COVID-safe plans. Having the doors open would allow people to come and go, further increasing the need for extra cleaning and disregarding other rules that our hirers need to abide by. We have raised this issue previously with members of the Noble Park Public Hall Trust, who are very supportive of our approach and would prefer access to be restricted to the hirers. That said, there is currently work underway on the feasibility of a library lounge in that centre, so plans could very well change in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Sprague. Mr Benny.
The next question is also from Matthew Kerwin of Noble Park. As part of the new set of interpretive signs for Central Noble Park, is there one plan for Copus Park explaining about Thomas Copus? The 1994 plaque from the City of Springvale indicates how much the community work of Thomas Copus was valued. However, there is no information there about his life. Mr Van Boxtel could respond.
Thank you, Mr Van Boxtel.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Matthew, for your question. In December 2021, Council, in partnership with the Noble Park Revitalisation Board, installed a new interpretive sign in Copus Park, Noble Park. The sign draws on the park's unique history and the locals who contributed to its creation, with special focus on Thomas Copus. The sign references his passion for horticulture, and highlights his contribution to the Noble Park community. It forms part of the placemaking program across the City of Greater Dandenong's 3 activity centres. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Van Boxtel. Mr Benny.
The final question this evening is from Ros Blades AM of Noble Park. On behalf of the Noble Park Community Centre, we would appreciate an update on the Ross Reserve Master Plan. Mr Bosman could respond. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Benny. Mr Bosman.
Deputy Mayor, thank you, and to Ms Blades. There are a number of projects occurring in relation to the Ross Reserve Master Plan, and the officers dealing with these projects would be more than happy to meet representatives of the Noble Park Community Centre, provide an overview of current and future projects. So officers will make contact with representatives of the Community Centre shortly, and we'll arrange a time to provide the group with an update of all of the activities that are related to the Ross Reserve Master Plan. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Mr Benny, do you have any questions taken on notice at the last meeting?
Yes, I do, Deputy Mayor. There was a single question, public question, taken on notice at the last meeting. It was from Branka Tomic. That question has been answered and is tabled in the minutes this evening.
Thank you, Mr Benny. Item 4.1, Officers' Reports, Part 2. 4.1.1, Draft Minutes of Arts Advisory Board Meeting, 31st of May 2022. Do I have a mover? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Garrard. Seconded by Councillor Lim. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item 4.1.2, Reappointment of Director, Dandenong Market Proprietary Limited, DMPL. Do I have a mover?
Happy to move, Chair.
Moved by Councillor Dark, seconded by Councillor Milkovich. Do I have any questions? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Yes, Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Chair. I just wish to congratulate Mr Mollenkoff on his reappointment as a Director of DMPL. As Mr Mollenkoff has actually been on the board for the last 8 years, he's been a significant part of the DMPL's operations, including seeing through several leadership changes through the times and some turbulence not too long ago. And his experience in dealing with corporate boards and his experience in the water industry is second to none. To have somebody like this on the board is a significant opportunity for this council, and to have him willing to stay on for another 12 months to hit the constitutional maximum of 9 years is a good sign as well that the Dandenong market is operating very good. So I just wish to congratulate him on the extension for 12 months.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Item 4.1.3, renaming of the Link Road in Noble Park to Madeira Way. Moved by Councillor Garrard. Seconded by Councillor Trong. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Of course, Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I would just like to thank the Bunurong Land Council for their cooperation in arriving at the wonderful name of Madeira Way, which actually means torrential rain, and thank them for their assistance in the comprehensive consultation process.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Garrard. Item 4.1.4, Instrument of Delegation by Council to Members of Council Staff. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Garrard, seconded by Councillor Formoso. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item 4.1.5, Report on matters discussed at councillor briefing sessions and pre-council meetings during 14th of June to 11th of July. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Garrard, seconded by Councillor Trong. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item 4.1.6, list of registered correspondence to Mayor and councillors. Moved by Councillor Garrard, seconded by Councillor Lim. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition?
I have a question.
Oh, yes, Councillor Formoso.
Deputy Mayor. Thank
Of course.
you. Just in relation to the correspondence to the Mayor, it was a formal complaint regarding management of several aspects of the municipality. Could I please be informed what complaints were regarding specifically, and if this letter has been responded to, please?
Thanks, Councillor Formoso. Mr. Benny?
Yes, through you, Deputy Mayor. It might be just as easy for me to share the letter with all councillors because it was quite an extensive letter. It actually addressed a lot of matters that were not council's responsibility, but generally speaking, it was amenity-related issues, not necessarily about any specific area of council. And as the summary, I think, indicates, it also accompanied an appeal or a complaint against a parking infringement notice. And my own reading and assessment was that primarily the complaint was about the infringement, and there were other matters that were included. But we're taking all matters seriously. I don't know whether it's been responded to yet, but we will follow up tomorrow and let all councillors know the status and also to provide more detail on the content. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Benny. Councillor Formoso, did you have any further questions?
No, nothing further. Thanks for that, Mr. Benny.
Okay. Any other questions? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item 5, notices of motion. 5.1, notice of motion number 20, 1 tree per child. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Garrard, seconded by Councillor Trung. Are there any questions?
I've got a question.
Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Chair. My question to the relevant officer, I note the wording of this motion basically states that we will come to council at the next appropriate council meeting, very public servant-esque. I just wanted to find out, do we have a confirmed date in when that's going to come back? In terms of a set date, is it before the end of the year, before the end of the financial year? I just don't want the appropriate council meeting date potentially being in 2.5 years' time when I'm off council.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Mr. Benny.
Through you, well, it's the councillor's notice of motion, but I must admit to being the public servant-esque who drafted that word. I think the requirement of a notice of motion is that it be addressed and responded to without delay. But we can't be specific about a date because there is a bit of work to undertake, as the motion and the report indicates. And the preference would be to the next council meeting. That's not possible. Quite likely the meeting after that is highly possible, but it will not be as far down the track as you have questioned, and it will be as soon as practicable.
Thank you, Mr. Benny. Councillor Dark, do you have any other questions?
No further questions.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Councillor Garrard, would you like to say?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank my fellow councillors for supporting this notice of motion, which is about 1 tree per child. And the initiative aims to ensure that every child in Dandenong plants a tree before they leave school. We know that this has significant psychological and educative value to children, and this report looks into the feasibility of the council adopting this initiative. If the council does not adopt this initiative, schools in our local area cannot access this program. So hopefully the report finds that this is feasible and that the council is able to adopt this.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Item 6, reports from councillors, delegated members.
Deputy Mayor.
Oh, yes, of course. Sorry, Councillor Formoso.
Thank you. I'd like to speak to the item, and I'd like to personally thank my fellow Councillor Garrard for bringing this notice of motion. It's a fantastic initiative and one that we desperately need. Coincides well with National Tree Day, and we'll also be having our National Tree Day event this weekend to plant some trees, and perhaps we could get the new childcare centre to plant some of those trees that will be removed. Thank you again.
Thank you, Councillor Formoso. Item 6, reports from councillors, delegated members and councillors' questions. Councillor Truong?
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Garrard?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just to highlight, speaking of trees, it seems to be all about trees tonight. The International Tree Day is on this Sunday. Please join us at Tatterson's Park at 10 a.m. If you're feeling so inclined to help us plant some trees. And then after you do tree planting, you can head up the road to the Snow Festival, which is in Springboard. So it's all happening, I feel like I'm selling this, this Sunday in Dandenong. I would just like to take this moment to acknowledge the City of Dandenong and the significant work that members of the Council have done towards a really significant moment in the planning scheme in Victoria. The City of Dandenong Council and all member councils who are part of the Council Alliance for a Sustainable Built Environment, otherwise known as CASB, have successfully embedded an important amendment into the Victorian planning scheme. The current planning scheme is one of the biggest barriers to creating a sustainable environment. The amendment is extremely significant as it includes consideration of climate change in the purpose of the Victorian provisions and all planning schemes. This amendment will have tremendous impact by creating a much more sustainable, less polluting, more energy efficient, more cost efficient built environment. And I sincerely want to acknowledge the work of the councillors, particularly Jodie Bosman, who has been a significant part of this this finally happening. It's been happening, it's been a number of years. I understand that this has been in train, and it will now allow for consideration of the environment in the planning scheme, which is a significant game changer. And I think we should take the time to really thank Mr Bosman and his team and really acknowledge what this does mean in terms of the environment. My questions tonight, Deputy Mayor. The United Nations International Campaign of 16 Days of Activism against Gender-Based Violence takes place every year from November the 25th until the 10th of December. What are the Council plans for the 16 Days of Activism in 2022?
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Mr Devine?
Thank you, Acting Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for the question. In late November, Council will once again be organising the White Ribbon Day Walk for councillors, staff and community members to participate in. As always, media and communications will also be running socials throughout the 16 days, both externally and internally, and the Drum Theatre will also be lit up during this time. Opportunities may also arise for Council to partner with community organisations to increase awareness around gender-based violence, and further information will come to councillors in the coming months.
Thank you, Mr Devine. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you so much. The City of Greater Dandenong's litter and waste strategy expired 2 years ago in 2020, with many other councils currently completing their circular economy strategies. What is the status and timeframe of ours, including what is the planned consultation approach? In particular, is it a two-step consultation approach which has been used by Dandenong to get meaningful community feedback?
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Mr Van Boxtel.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Garrard, for your question. The Waste and Litter Strategy adopted in 2015 was scheduled for review in 2020, the midpoint of the 10-year operational plan that aligns with this strategy. The COVID-19 pandemic and several changes within the waste sector delayed this review. A preliminary review was recently undertaken by internal staff and updates were made to the document to reflect changes within the waste sector. Following recent feedback from Council's executive, an updated waste and litter strategy is planned for presentation to councillors at a briefing session in the coming months and will include a discussion on community consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Van Boxtel. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you. My next question is, recent lighting additions to the section of the Dandenong bypass in Chapel Road in Keysborough South does not appear to have improved the lighting in this area. Can we rerun a lux test and compare the test done prior to the installation of the new lights?
Mr Van Boxtel.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Garrard, for your question. We assume you are referring to the section of Chapel Road between Church Road and Kulana Drive. Previous readings for this section of road were undertaken in August 2021 and resulted in the subsequent installation of 3 additional streetlights in early 2022. The lighting separation distance should now meet Council's standards. However, lux readings post-installation have not been conducted, but we will arrange for these to be undertaken as part of our next audit, which is planned for August. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Van Boxtel. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you. My next question is, with the recently gazetted State Planning Scheme Amendment VC 216, does this override the Greater Dandenong C201 Planning Scheme Amendment? And if so, does that lead to stronger provisions in our planning scheme?
Mr Bosman.
Madam Deputy Mayor, thank you to you. Councillor Garrett, no it doesn't, and as you correctly said, we now have within the state planning provisions, the Victoria planning provisions, a strong body of a philosophical, if not technical, body of policy that supports local policy in the area of ESD. We already in this council have within our planning scheme a local policy on ESD. So we now have, let's call it the bookends. We've got the state planning side of it sorted out through this recently approved amendment, VC 216, and we already have and it's been in there for a couple of years already, our own local policy on ESD. What we have done, and you referenced CASB earlier, is together with the CASB councils, we have put an application to the Minister. We're seeking authorisation to amend the planning scheme, and each of these councils, including ourselves, will be seeking to go to the next level of ESD policy, where the thresholds for compliance, the thresholds of requiring ESD compliance and I suppose the rigour of ESD will be ramped up. The threshold will come down, the technical requirements will be improved, and that is currently with the Minister. To answer the question, does it in any way water down? No, it doesn't. In my view, it in fact creates a strong philosophical basis, not only for our existing policy, but for those councils, the CASB councils, that have now put before the Minister a request for further changes to local policy within their own individual planning schemes. And I think that's where you'll see the impact. The ultimate impact will be through the, let's call it the executive side of the planning scheme through its local policies. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. That's very, very good news. My last question tonight, Madam Deputy Mayor, is it has been almost 5 years since Martin Bakula, MP for Keysborough, promised a 20-year lease of the majority of the Chandler Road to Council. If it hasn't been already, when will the lease be finalised and resolved?
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Ms Roberts.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you, I can advise today that we received a fully executed copy of the lease for a 20-year term plus 2 further 10-year terms at the good grace of the Minister.
Thank you.
That's extremely good news. Thank you very much. That's it from me.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Councillor Lim.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, everyone. Just on the Thursday, the 14th of July, I attended the Southeast Business Award breakfast hosted by the Greater Dandenong Chamber of Commerce. And that morning, I had a chance to discuss with the President of the Greater Dandenong Chamber of Commerce as well, because my intention is to form Springboard Chamber of Commerce under the umbrella of Greater Dandenong Chamber of Commerce. And she's very pleased, and also she's willing to support my idea. And at the moment, I try to recruit some business owners that really keen to support me on that idea. On the afternoon, I had a chance to meet Councillor from City of Monash. Her name is Nikki Lu, and also with the President, Mr. An Sok Hong, President of National Liaison Chairman of National Liaison Council of Chinese Australian, that been servicing Chinese community for over 20 years. And the idea of two of them came to see me because they want to celebrate multicultural lunar festival or moon festival. That the idea is want to combine between our city and City of Monash. And in that, they're going to include all the Chinese cultures, Cambodian cultures, Vietnamese culture, Japanese, Korean, and many other countries that in the southeast and also in the east as well. And in the evening, I had a chance to attend the what we call Stand Down Community Support Fund event hosted by the Greyhound Racing Club. Yeah, it's a great one and great evening. There's a lot of people turn up as well. And thank you also to, I think, Councillor Loy Truong that attend different functions for some reason in the same room, very big room, and also Councillor O'Reilly as well on that day. And had a good chance to give a speech and also, hand down all the certificate to all the volunteers on that day. On Saturday, the 16th of July, we had a good discussion with Mr. Scott Walker from our city and also Mr. Rob Koch from City of Monash, from Monash Health. We had a good discussion how to help to vaccinate more people in our city, especially Springboard wards. And we had a good result on that day because I keep sending some people because my pharmacy sometimes could not cope with vaccination. On that day, Mr. I think Rob from Monash Health, he gave me some statistic. We had about 74 vaccination for Pfizer and 14 flu vax. It's such a great outcome for that. And the following Saturday, on the 23rd of July, we had about 113 Pfizer and also 3 children doses as well. That's a great outcome as well. And he asked me about my statistics as well. I gave him some of my statistics. He was surprised that we were very busy for vaccination. That's the intention to put at the multicultural place is the best place that a lot of traffic flow, and also our people tend to be a bit selective. They forgot about COVID, but COVID never forget us. That's the problem. That by doing that, they really just walk in very easily and get vaccination and out of the way. Therefore, we had a great achievement. But in the future, I hopefully we can organize more vaccination at the multicultural place rather than at the library or somewhere else. People are a bit hard to go and a bit hard to know where it is. And if it's multicultural place, very easy. People walk by, you just drop in, had a vaccination. That's a very good one as well. And on the 5th, on Sunday, the 17th of July, I attended Kuantan birthday celebration. It means that one is like a temple, Chinese temple, but celebrate Confucianism more. And hosted by Teochew Chinese Association of Victoria. And had a chance to give a speech, a short speech, because they asked me to give a speech, and I acknowledged their services for over 40 years, and in that we presented a certificate of appreciation to the president of Teochew Association as well. Not just that, we also give them certificate of what we call acknowledgement or recognition about Teochew Association as well. And that day as well, I had a chance to present a certificate of appreciation from Federal Member of Hawthorne, Minister Home Affairs, Claire O'Neill, and they were very pleased from our city that we acknowledge their services for their community. And that's about all for me, actually. And also the question, I don't have much question, but only one question I want to ask, because many months ago, our city gave us some leaflet to pass to every visitor in Springboard. The most important thing, we want to tell them how to cross the roundabout or cross the traffic light, whatever. But the most important is another slide that talk about sensor parking. And sometimes they ask me, when you're going to install the sensor parking? but I probably want to ask the relevant officer when going to install the sensor parking in our central ward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lim. Mr Van Boxtel?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. So, Richard, I just want to be clear on the question. So, we've done a leaflet recently on the roundabout and issues to do with safety, and you're seeking a similar leaflet to be distributed to traders or community in respect to the parking sensors to make them aware of where they've been installed and why they've been installed. Yeah, that's something that we can publicise, so we'll address that. Thank you, Councillor Lim.
Thank you, Mr. Van Boxtel, and thank you, Deputy Mayor. The reason I said like that because some people complain to me about some people park very long time, along Buckingham Avenue. They said, why we don't have any officer to find them? But I said, no, they're very efficient, the officer. But from time to time, probably coincidentally, just their luck, purely luck more, they didn't get fined. Therefore, why some people ask me, you said that they're going to install a sensor parking, but when going to install, because all people are very upset because it's hard to find a car park. That's the main reason I asked you for. Therefore, at least I can notify some people that I'm unhappy with some people that park too long and along Buckingham Avenue. Thank you, Mr. Canberra.
Thank you, Councillor Lim. Councillor Milkovich?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a couple of quick questions. Could we get an update from relevant officer regarding the current backlog and how many people are actually waiting for the citizenship to be done in regards to the ceremony? I know there was a bit of a issue there during the crisis before. Thank you.
Thanks. Ms Roberts?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Sorry, I didn't quite catch the question. How many went at the last?
How many are actually waiting? What's the backlog at the moment?
Oh, okay.
And what's the plan to get them moving into citizenship? Thank you.
Sorry, I don't know that number off the top of my head. I know the number's not extremely large because we've got two large citizenship ceremonies coming up in the next 3 weeks. So I'll get that number to you tomorrow.
Thank you, Ms Roberts.
Thank you very much. I would also like to get an update from the relevant officer regarding the installation and actually redoing of the lights at the cricket field at Lowe's Tuig Reserve. I hope I pronounced it right. There were some issues there before, and I think they had to be redug and reinstalled. So when that will be finished, please. Thank you.
Mr Devine?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Council has engaged a contractor to do those works. I don't have a definitive update in terms of where it is, Councillor, but I will follow that up and get you a response tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr Devine. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to wish Vern Crastins a happy retirement. He's decided to call it quits with the council after what I understand years and years of service, and I understand he was involved in a large number of projects from Little India to this to that. I actually had a pleasure of meeting Vern in Dandenong North on Brady Road when he delivered, I think, what was one of the probably last projects for him, a little one in regards to the shops and the outdoor dining area. So wish him all the best. Enjoy the retirement. Hopefully it's not as stressful as the council, so good on him. I would like to get also an update on the status as to when they will come online or actually be utilised in their full capacity, parking sensors on Lonsdale Street. I understand there was a topic of conversation. Apparently they were going to be a part of the bigger picture where there's going to be some lights that will show how many parking spots are available, from what I was told, if I understood correctly. Cheston type of thing. Different, but can we get an update as to when they will be put to use and how we'll monitor those? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Milkovich. Mr Van Boxtel?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. So the parking sensors, there's sort of a number of phases, I guess, in terms of their introduction. The first phase is to install the hardware, which is happened in Dandenong and happening in Springvale. Obviously, one thing that helps us to do, or two things that immediately helps us to do, is one is to assist with enforcement of time limits in the relative parking locations. The second thing it allows us to do is to actually collect data on patterns of parking occupancy, which we can then use as part of our forward planning to better manage parking supply to match the demand of the abutting businesses. A third opportunity in the future with the parking technology is then to look at add-ons, such as apps where you can then use an app to find a vacant parking space, or to potentially even pay for your parking through that app. And also, as part of that opportunity, it is possible to then look at signage, digital signage that could be interactive as part of a smart city type approach, where that signage could guide people to available and vacant parking spaces. We're sort of at that in-between step at the moment. We don't have any immediate plans to introduce that third tier of investment, but that's something through the transport team and the regulatory services team that we can take on board and investigate. So there's no immediate plans for councils' parking areas as such, but you may be aware, for example, in Dandenong, not linked to council, but for example, part of the Armada Dandenong Plaza shopping centre, they've just introduced some of that technology that you're referencing, where they've actually got the multi-deck car park on Foster Street, where it's now got the red and the green lights to tell you whether a car space is occupied or not occupied. And they're the types of things that, through time and investment, we can potentially extend to other council assets within Central Dandenong and our other activity centres. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Van Boxtel. Councillor Milkovich.
Thank you, Mr Van Boxtel. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And lastly, what I'd like to do, just mention one of the functions that Deputy Mayor Foster and myself have attended on Saturday. It was up at Lois Toohig Reserve again. It was Masala Football Club, Dandenong Football Club Ladies High Tea. And I tell you what, it was an absolutely fabulous event. It was organised and it was actually hosted by Matt's wife Stella and her mum Mary, who prepared all the food. I got to tell you, it was absolutely delicious, bless her hands. What I'd like to mention really is that this particular club is really a pride and joy of Dandenong North, and it's gone from strength to strength. This high tea event was actually coincided with the launch of their women's team, as far as I understand, and they've gone from, I believe, 4 members some years ago, not that distant past, to 109 full-time members. It's great to see kids from all over our community participate. I know for a fact, and I've spoken to Stella for quite a while, that these people that run this club, they should be given a medal. They travel all the way from Kensington. Every single training session. It is no small feat, and it's a massive investment in local community. So, look, I was actually thinking whether we could maybe, when the Mayor comes back from leave or something, to just write a letter of thank you to the club and everyone involved in the running of the club, to say, look, as part of our community, the local community, we do thank you for your efforts, and we really do thank you for all the hard work you put in. Like I said, it's great to see the kids kicking footy, and not to sort of forget the cricket club that operates from there as well, Dandenong North Cricket Club. Both fantastic clubs, both really the pride and joy of Dandenong North. So it'll be great if we can somehow say thank you and just acknowledge their hard work and you know, their efforts in keeping the community together. So
Yep,
thank you.
Sure, we can
That's
do
it
that.
from me.
Thank you, Councillor Milkovich. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Chair. Before I begin, as I've just received Facebook messages, I just wish to congratulate White Star Soccer Club in Dandenong for their promotion to, I believe, the NPL2, which is one of the premier grounds to be able to hit that league, given the amount of soccer clubs we have. I had the benefit of attending a couple of key events over the last couple of weeks, the first being the Springboard Football Club's 60th anniversary dinner held at the Azura Club, and it was a phenomenal turnout by in excess of 100 people to come out and see what is happening. It's a key part and very important as well, because it is, through the Southern Football League now, the largest football and netball club out of all of the league. And if you look at the clubs in that area, it incorporates from Cheltenham all the way to Caulfield, some very large, very powerful clubs. And to have Springvale over the last few years, led by Sean Francis and his wife who runs the netball, is a phenomenal achievement. And to have so many people come out to celebrate is a big achievement as well. The Springboard Football Club started off actually by the local priest in the local church, and then quickly escalated up to become a YCW club, and has rebranded several times to the Springvale Districts Football Club and Netball Club, as it's now known. The second one I did have the opening is with yourself, Deputy Mayor. Was with the Minister for Climate Change and a few other departments, water and something else, to actually open the Alan Corrigan Reserve upgrades. This was something that myself and, she'll kill me watching this, Councillor Tan, actually had put a lot of work into securing funding for, and had put a lot of emphasis on the upgrades to the park. And to be successful in having a grant of $160,000, and we matched that with in-kind contributions and a budget bid as well, to have the park upgraded for our residents, and it looks phenomenal. And for those that have followed, and I know a couple of people sent me a couple of private messages when, with the photo standing on the logs, it's true, we did adjust the people standing on the heights to justify for the heights of councillors and ministers, as unfortunately some councillors and ministers are quite height vertically challenged, and those that are taller ended up to balance it out, but it did end up being a very good photo. My first question this evening is from the Keysborough Bowls Club. I've had a couple of phone calls from a couple of members and from a member on the executive as well to do with the master plan of the Rowley Allen Reserve and the upgrades there. The master plan has been finalised, but the Lawn Bowls Club have said that they haven't had a whole lot of conversations about, one, in terms of what that means for them, two, in terms of timeframes for delivery and projects, and three, they've asked whether it's possible to organise a meeting with council officers and the membership as well, because they do want to have their members involved in the future as well. It is a very important club, given it's next door to the Parkland Retirement Village and the issues around social isolation, given that they have had in the past a lot of people go across to the Keysborough Hotel, and then the issues that come with that. So if I could pass it to the relevant officer about convening a meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Mr Devine.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, council officers would welcome the opportunity to meet with the club and give them an update.
Thank you, Mr Devine. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Chair. My next question is from the owner of the Dandenong Laundry and Dry Cleaning in Langhorne Street. He has raised a question to me the other day to do with the car parking out the front of where his shop is. Now, there is a gap where he has a driveway going into his shop, and there has been some signage on the side of the shop which does say that there is room for customer parking. However, it's very grey as to where customers can park. He has had a request whether there may be provisions for just one car park space to be limited to a 2 or 5 minute drop-off, just so people have the ability to drop off their dry cleaning, collect what they need to, without then having to go find the parking machine, put money in, go back and forth, just for a quick 2 minute job.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dark. Mr Bosman.
Madam Deputy Mayor, thank you. Councillor, together with my colleagues in traffic engineering, we'll have a look at that. If you'll just pass on to me, please, the details of who I can contact, his name and number, etc. We'll get onto that and see if we can arrange for some short-term parking in that area.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Chair. My next question is with regards to the Noble Park Tennis Club. I know Mr Devine has replied to an email back to me today. The Tennis Club has asked a significant amount of questions to do with the future pavilion on site, and I know I have had some questions from both Parkville Cricket Club and from Noble Park Drina following on from a group chat that occurred in a Facebook group chat, and as long as some emails as well, particularly to do with what the future plan is for the pavilion and the accommodation of future growth and planning. The questions that I'm aware that the Director has replied back to, I just wanted to find out what the upgrade is, if you could just provide a quick summary on where we're at as well, because I'm aware the Noble Park Tennis Club has been contacting me quite rigorously around this.
Mr Devine.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, the Noble Park Master Plan was adopted a number of years ago by Council, and there's been a number of meetings between the user groups and council officers to look at some reconfigurations of part of the plan, and I think there's some agreement there in terms of the location of additional tennis courts and car parking. The specific request of recent times relates to the development of the pavilion and the elements that are included in the pavilion. The club's seeking a pickleball court, if I've got that correct, to play pickleball indoor. It's a modified version of tennis. It would be over and above Council's facility standards, but it can be considered as part of the pavilion design, which I think at this stage is slated for consideration in the 2023-24 financial year. But we're, again, happy to meet with those clubs as required.
Okay, thank you, Mr Devine. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Chair. My next question is from Mr Corey or Daniel Corey of the Kumura Cricket Club. I actually spoke to him at the Springboard Football Club dinner and then received several issues to do with the Kumura Cricket Club, particularly around the Kumura nets. All the other cricket clubs in the area have received upgrades to the nets from Rowley Allen when I was first elected to Springvale South and many other clubs as well. Can we please get an update on when Kumura is proposed to get their updated cricket nets?
Mr Devine.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, and thanks for the question, Councillor Dark. Council has upgraded a significant number of cricket nets in recent times, and officers did meet with the president of the cricket club recently. The works are scheduled for the 2023-24 financial year, but officers will meet with the club on site in the immediate future to look at any short-term rectification works that may be required. So it's not far away, but it won't be this summer.
Thank you, Mr Devine. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Chair. My next question is from the president of the FC Noble Hurricane Soccer Club, who plays at the Alex Nelson Reserve in Springvale South. There's been an email exchange I've sent to Sports and Recreation, particularly around the grass turf wicket in the middle of the ground and the dangers that that's proposing to the soccer club. The soccer club has 11 teams and they've been navigating through the season as much as possible. It has now got to a stage where they're having a significant issue with the grass wicket, the injuries that they have been occurring and the potential to relocate as well. I'm aware that they have spoken to the Sports and Recreation Department and the response was, I believe, less than ideal or insufficient to provide enough information about them and what's occurring. I'm aware that they have brought in Football Victoria to have a look at the ground because of the issues with that. I'll forward on some correspondence I received from the President. It's quite an extensive email with an attachment as well. If we could please look into this, one, to see what we can do, given that we're almost at the end of the soccer season, but two, in the future, to see what we can do potentially about dealing with the grass turf wicket on the reserve as the forthcoming the cricket season comes up and then the forthcoming soccer next year.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Mr Devine.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, council officers are aware of the concerns that the club has. For the information of councillors, it has a turf cricket wicket table in the centre of the soccer field, which, given we've had a fairly wet winter, has caused some issues. And we will be meeting with the club to work through their concerns and also consider their growth, which is fantastic, and how we might be able to accommodate them into the future.
Thank you, Mr Devine. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Chair. My final question. In the previous term of council, we had some ward meetings which were convened by multiple councillors at the request. I know myself and former councillor Ros Blades were quite prominent in hosting ward meetings. I just want to find out, one, I suppose that they've gone, wayward, for a lack of a better word. I haven't seen any ward in particular holding one. There's been a couple of crime and nights or nights to meeting specific reasons, but there hasn't been any sort of ward meeting being held. Now, I know that it's a lot more challenging now. We have 11 individual wards and the issues that poses with 11 different councillors. But if we could please investigate and see what options there are about having a ward meeting, particularly given so much is going on at the moment in terms of infrastructure, the questions about waste and what's happening there as well. I know that there's some wards can be grouped together, Keysborough South and Keysborough can be, or maybe not, depending. And so certainly there's some options that might be available. But I do think a lot of residents aren't being informed, given the lack of local media coverage as well, the lack of newspapers that are being delivered, and people just generally don't have an idea of what council's doing at the moment. So I think that might be an option to have a look at if possible.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Ms Roberts.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, yeah, we'll have a look at that, Councillor Dark. We have some guidelines for ward meetings and for community forums. So we'll see how we can group together different areas and come back to you with some proposals.
Thank you, Ms Roberts. Councillor. Councillor Formoso.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, everybody. I agree with Councillor Dark. Firstly, I'd be keen to take in something like that. I almost feel that we've become, non-existent. People don't even realise that we're out there doing work. So it'd be really work and advocating for the community. So it would be good to have something like that. I was thinking about doing that at a local cafe and then perhaps changing location to promote local businesses as well, particularly after COVID events. So I'd be really keen in partaking in that as well. Second of all, a bit disappointed with my fellow Councillor Garrard not promoting the Tahatchwan Park Tree Planting Day on Saturday the 30th of July. So it's not just happening at Tatterson Park. It will be held at Tahatchwan Park this Saturday at 10 a.m. as well, so I'm hoping to attend with my children if I can. So that's a good one. And also just wanting to say a big thank you to our team for I drove through the ward last week, and I noticed the immense amount of curb and channel work that's taken place. Justin Drive's been completely resurfaced. I'm noticing a lot more work is about to be done at Bakers Road. I think almost all of the 100-odd merits that I've been putting in over the past 24 months have almost been completed. So a huge thank you to our staff. It's really commendable and very noticeable within the ward. So a big thank you to them. Also like to mention that I attended the SEL board meeting on the 20th of July, as I do monthly. And SEL are doing incredibly well with the takeover. They were particularly impressed with how accommodating YMCA was with the handover and the transitioning. They were extremely professional and really went well and above assisting SEL with that process. So a big thank you to them as well. And another thing I'd like to mention, a lot of people have been telling me that they've put on some of the winter kilos. So I'd really, really encourage our residents and perhaps our staff members as well to have the free Get Active app on their phones, because it's an excellent way to track your exercise and movement. And there's also some nutrition options as well. Everyone knows that I'm a huge advocate for our community, our municipality, to become more active in line with our Make Your Move strategy. So I'd really, really encourage everybody to download that app. And that's all from me. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Formoso. Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor, I attended the Rotary Club of Springvale dinner at Sandown Greyhounds. It was a fundraiser to support the Athol Road Primary School Wellbeing Dog. This event attended by about 40 people, including Councillor Trong and myself. And I was pleased to hear from the good people of the Rotary Club of Springvale and hear how they plan to continue to support the community. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. On the 12th of July, I attended the Empowering Communities Forum workshop. This is a great opportunity for the Dandenong West community to come together and share some great ideas for their community to liven it up. So look forward to seeing what comes from those forums. On the 16th of July, I attended the Cambodian Broadcasting Network Community Dinner Concert in celebration of their 12th anniversary. It was a very lively event. I believe they had a well-known Cambodian Australian singer that was there, and lots of people were having as many photo opportunities with him as much as they could. On the 21st of July, I attended the Lions Club of Dandenong Changeover Dinner. They do amazing work in our community, and they're hard-working volunteers, and it's great to see that it's a lively volunteer group there. And they raise a lot of funds for a whole range of purposes. On the 23rd of July, I attended with Councillor Dark, as he's mentioned, the opening of the Alan Corrigan Reserve upgrades with Minister Lily D'Ambrosio and Meng Heng Tak MP. It was fantastic upgrades to the Alan Corrigan Reserve, the play centre, the nature play, and the logs that helped me actually become a little bit taller and the same height as Councillor Dark, as he pointed out. I also attended with Councillor Milkovich the Masala Dandenong Football Club Ladies High Tea, and as Councillor Milkovich said, it was a great spread, it was a great event and a great opportunity to promote women in sport, and I really encourage any a woman who would like to put their hand up to play football, to perhaps contact Masala Dandenong Football Club and put their name down. Mr. Benny, are there any questions from last council meeting to table?
Yes, there are, Deputy Mayor. There were 14 councillor questions taken on notice at the last meeting. They've all been completed and the answers will be included in the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Benny. Is there any urgent business? If there's no urgent business, I close the meeting at 8:09. Thank you.